Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the Oklahoma City Board of Adjustment meeting for January the 21st, 2016. Our first order of business is to receive the minutes of the January 7th, 2016 meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Register your vote. Register your votes. Can I have a verbal vote? All in favor of receiving the minutes? Aye. The minutes are approved. Our next order of business is continuance requests or withdrawal requests from staff.
Okay, I've got two items today. Item 1, case 14-182, applicant requests a continuance to February 4th. And item 6, case number 14-162, requests a continuance to February 18th.
Make a motion that we continue case number 14182 to February the 4th.
Second.
Motion and a second. Register your vote. They are continued.
Make a motion that we continue case number 14162 to the February 18th docket.
Second.
Register your vote. We have a motion. They are approved for continuance to February the 18th. Any continuance requests or withdrawal requests from the public? Hearing none, we'll proceed with our first case.
First item for hearing is item 2, case 14173, request of Ludvina and Enrique Uribe for a variance to permit a home encroaching a platted 50-foot front building line at 816 Southwest 85th Street.
Is the applicant here? Please come to the podium and tell us about your request. Give us your name and address for the record. Pull the microphone down so we can hear you.
Okay. It's my address.
Give me your name and your address.
Enrique Uribe. My address is 816 Southwest 85th.
Okay. Tell us about your request, what you want.
And we just buy the lot, and I want to be like my neighbors, like 50-foot variance, like my neighbor.
From your plan, it looks to me like the home that you plan to build on this lot is very similar to the house to the
to the other house next door.
So as I read it, it looks to me like it's actually just the garage that's encroaching. Is that right?
Yeah.
The way it's laid out?
Any discussion or questions for the applicant?
I'll make a motion to approve the application.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Register your vote. You're approved.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Item 3 is case number 14181, request of Skyline Trails Land Fund for a variance to permit 2 neighborhood identification signs in the street median located at 424 North Cemetery Road.
Good afternoon, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. The variance request before you today is very similar to a request that we brought before you a couple months ago. The way the code is interpreted for signage, it's the entire structure that's considered the sign, and you're only allowed the 19 square feet. Our signs are still very small, and if you look at just the identification portion of the sign, I believe it's within the confines of what the code allows. Obviously, when we're dealing with these median signs, the reason they're required to be so small is we're worried about sight line issues. We do have an exhibit that I just handed out, which would be the 3rd page, which shows you a perspective view from the right-of-way, and as you can tell, it's set back far enough as to not create any sight line issues. Staff does agree with that in their favorable considerations. Additionally, staff did not identify any unfavorables, and we would ask for your support.
I don't have any problems necessarily with the request. Somebody at some point will make sure that it's not actually violating the side triangle, I assume. And it's so hard to tell when there's nothing there.
Right.
Just big open field and
Sure.
some scrubby trees. But I'll move approval.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Register your vote. You are
Thank you.
approved. I'd like to tell you, the applicant on the second case, you've been approved, and so you're welcome to stay in the meeting, but you don't have to. You're welcome to leave when you're ready.
Item 4, case 14170, request of HPI Community Hospital for a variance to the number of signs in the O2 district located at 9800 Broadway Extension.
Is the applicant here? Please approach the microphone and give us your name and address for the record, and then speak to your request. Pull that microphone down so we can hear you clearly.
Thank you. Troy Downing, Richard Brown and Associates, here representing HPI. Last board we were given a extension to revise some of the wayfinding signs on the site. As per the request of the board, I visited with staff and brought the revised signage up to Mr. Chambliss, and we discussed that, and I do not believe he had any issue with the signage we were proposing. What we have done is reduced the number of signs on the site. We are on the wayfinding signs, which includes the front entrance sign. We are down to 8 signs on that. We have also reduced the size of the majority of the signage throughout the site.
You know, looking at this, I have to say, it doesn't. I felt like we had not completely communicated to you our desire to have you reduce your signage. That you've reduced it by 1, and you know, it's still taller than I'd like to see them. Half of which is just, you know, basically your logo. You know, which I don't really think that, you know, it requires you to repeat on every little sign you put up. Type C, for instance, you know, the top half of the sign is HPI Metaplex, or Type F. I just don't see the need for that. If you could get them down under 3 feet, you could get my vote. You could get them down from 6 to maybe 5, you could probably get my vote. But I just feel like there's too much signage for this space. I've driven by this site 10 times since you were here last. You're already going to have so much more signage than the other medical facilities that are there. I just don't think I can vote for this.
Do you know how your wayfinding signage compares to other medical complexes? I mean, can you comment on that?
The one next door was submitted a variance. They have a total of 13 wayfinding signs throughout their site.
So what size are those signs?
Signage is comparable. They have some smaller signs inside of the site, but these signs that we're asking to be a little larger are up against the building, on the back of the building or on the side of the building, which we feel is really directing traffic. Most of these are not in the parking lot. They're right up against the building and are directing people to those entrances into those sides of the building. And on those sides of the building, we do not have any signage on the building.
How tall are the signs next door? The wayfinding signs?
The wayfinding signs vary in height. The ones inside the parking lot area vary from about 3 to 4 feet, and they've got some 7-foot signs in there.
Well, why are yours, in some of these, it varies from type to type, granted, but some of them are 3 feet in height, some of them are 6 feet in height. Help me explain why those heights, how you come up with those heights.
Due to it's really just sight and people being able to read those as they come through. There are 3 main entrances, or actually 4 entrances that the public will use. There's a drop-off where they have to come pick up patients. There's an imaging department, and there's a check-in. There's a visitor's entrance in the back. Actually 4. We've got the physician's entrance. So this is not just a hospital. We also have the business occupancy on the 2nd floor, which holds OSSO and Optimal Health, which are 2 separate entities and are a separate entrance. They would go to one area to check in for one instance and another area to check in for the other instance. So it's very imperative that we direct the traffic around the site so people know where they're going to they end up in the right place.
I'm sympathetic to what you're saying, but I agree with my colleague in that you're not really giving us, you still haven't answered the question. I mean, I was hoping to hear you say there's a rationale for needing signs that are 6 feet or 4 feet, but that's not what you're saying. You just keep elaborating on the fact that there are signs and that it's comparable to what's around. But if 3 feet is an acceptable height for providing wayfindings, and then I'm in agreement. I think limiting them is a good objective, and you're not telling me why they should be 6 feet or 4 feet versus 3 feet.
Well, the signs that are directing people to one item are a smaller sign. The one larger sign that we've got in the front of the building has many directional items because that's where the main traffic is coming in, and at that point, they need to know which way to go for each of these entrances. And that's why that sign is larger, due to the number of items on that sign.
I have a question. You come under the licensing procedure of the Health Department, is that correct?
That's correct.
And do they review your plans and construction plans of that?
That's correct.
And do they get involved on directionals or any issues regarding that? And are there any regulations specifically on the point of using directionals?
The only regulations on that would be for the emergency signage, and we have to have those directional signage, and that would be one item, yes.
I would offer you the opportunity and point out, too, that we are a board of 4 members today, and that it would take 3 for your position to prevail. And Scott has indicated his concerns, Janice has indicated hers, and I would concur with both of them. And so I would give you the opportunity, if you want, you can allow us to vote today, or you can request a continuance to go back and rethink and perhaps revise your proposal.
I'll have to ask for continuance.
The available dates are February the 4th, February the 18th. If that gives you enough time, we can roll into March if you need it. But those are the next 2 meetings.
Next available meeting would be the best.
February the 4th?
Yes.
Okay. I have a request from the applicant for a continuance to February the 4th.
So move.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Register your vote. You are continued, sir.
Item 5, case 14-140, request of Czech Hall Investment Partners for a variance to the site lighting requirements located at 601 North Czech Hall Road.
Hello, my name is Fiona Halter, and I'm representing Czech Hall Investment Partners. We are a developer of the retail center that's going in at the southwest corner of Czech Hall Road and Northwest 10th Street. We will also be the landlord. This variance request is primarily for safety concerns of the parking lot lighting levels that the code outlines. I know that we have been urged also by a number of our retailers in the center whose national averages tend to lean towards 4. And per the code, the max average allowed is 1.5.
JJ, are our sign lighting or our lighting regulations unsafe? I don't think so.
I don't know.
I went out and looked at this site. I have a lot of concern about spillover. Let me just say up front that I'm a big fan of on-cues. I think they're cool, which may surprise some people, but the whole concept behind them and so forth. But one of the reasons why they are cool is because they are lit up like daylight. And, you know, I just do not think that it is a good idea to light this entire site like that. The properties to the north are very close. They're lower. That light's going to spill over. I don't think I can support just a general extension of these lighting limits to the entire site. I think they're set up the way they are for a reason. The pedestrian and traffic areas are allowed more lighting so that they are safe. So.
Can I address that? I appreciate your concern. And so in the parking lot, particularly for this design, the parking lot is really encompassed by the out parcels along Northwest 10th and Czech Hall. And then you have the retail buildings kind of that run along that back crescent, if you will. And so That said, I understand your concern for spillover. When you're looking at site lighting, as you may know, it's not a blanket 3 across the entire site because you're looking at point sources. So they tend to be higher, and then they start to kind of get lower as they get farther away from the light pole. So when we were actually modeling this and we submitted our proposed photometric plan that would lean towards 3 in the parking lot areas, we're actually, for the spillover, meeting residential code in most of the boundary lines. Actually, when the commercial wraps around our surrounding zoning is commercial up until that kind of northwest corner, which is agriculture. We definitely have concerns about spillover. We can use cutoff fixtures at the property line, and we go to a security circuit at night that limits lighting. So those are just some of the concerns. But in terms of the way the code's written, 3 is allowed for pedestrian pathways, as you mentioned. But in parking fields, they act as, places people park, but they're also walking to the door. But the way the code is written, the whole parking field has to be at a max average of 1.5. So really, there's still pedestrians walking in that surface, but it's a lower lighting level.
Is your request driven by the requirement of some of the tenants that you're pursuing or want to pursue?
Yes, sir. We have concerns, and just, again, we respect the code, but nationally, this is on the lower side, and we are being urged by a number of our retailers, specifically Academy Sports and Outdoors, which is a tenant, and their national averages, again, exceed the 3 even in parking areas.
Did you provide us a copy of the specific INSA illuminating requirement that you were referring to?
I did not, but I can. I will say I'm not a lighting expert, but it is a minimum of 0.5 in parking fields, and it's a sliding scale from 4 to 1. I've been told by our lighting vendor that this would be a recommendation from them, that body, of 2.5 to 3 in a parking lot.
And did you also agree or commit to meet the spillover or light requirements at the property line as well?
Yes, ma'am. We can meet that, and we can even go, if the board still is hesitant, we can look at meeting a residential requirement at the lot line.
Do you know anything about this lighting requirement that she's referring to? Do either of you all?
The national?
Attorney? Yes.
No.
JJ, what is what is the essential basis for us being below what would be a national standard? Is it concern about spillover? Is that fair to say?
I think that's the main concern. The spillover light is measured at the property line, and she's committed to meet the spillover light. She just would like it brighter in the center of the lot where all the cars are.
Janice, what is you reference residential to the north that you're concerned about? What is that? Where is that? Is it on the other side of the highway? No? Oh, okay. I see it. Okay.
I'm assuming that those neighborhoods are outside the 300, or they're outside the notification range, so they would not have had the opportunity to comment on this.
One item, if I could point out, the fixtures actually face all the lighting down outside of, the code does allow, and JJ, you can keep me honest, architectural lighting, but really the parking lot lighting, the fixtures face the lighting directly down at the ground, and I can submit those if the board would like to see those. The variance request was for the entire site. We are developing just on that northwest kind of 30 acres, as you see. So there is quite a buffer from us and the actual residential to the east. And if the board would prefer that we revise our request to just focus on this development.
I mean, is there any justification other than the requirements or the perceived requirements of retailers to request this reduced
Well,
lighting?
as the landlord, we also have those safety, just in terms of concerns, but those are our main.
Do you have any other developments that are operating in compliance?
In terms of the 1.5?
In terms of, yes.
I would have to do a little research to answer that, but as I've been involved with, I've only been with the company for about a year and a half, but we, in that time, have done about 1 million square feet of retail in the Southeast and Midwest, and I would say that I'm not sure any meet this low of a lighting.
But I'm assuming, the major shopping areas in the metropolitan area, comply with this.
In Oklahoma City?
Yes.
Yes, sir, that's the code.
I'm going to share Janice's concerns. We obviously want people to be able to find their cars and find them safely and things like that. As the development expands, if we approve your request, then I think, we've created a very big footprint, of a really bright light.
I would encourage you to maybe consider I would encourage you to take a continuance to continue this case, and I would be curious to know, this is the first one of these cases that I've seen, and I'm reluctant to vote against it because I certainly understand the concerns, and I would be curious to know, don't take this personal, but the truth, and I want to do a little homework, the truth on what retailers are requiring as it relates to this. There's always a chance that our codes get behind the curve a little bit, and the things that are coming into my mind are things like the brand updates for signage for some of the auto dealerships we've seen of exposed metal and certain signage and things like that. And so I'm reluctant. I just don't feel educated enough. But I'm also concerned as well that if existing shopping centers, and I kind of want to look at that, if existing shopping centers are operating within this, and there's a grocery store with a parking area just to the north.
It's probably not a bad idea. Like you said, this is really the first one of these that I've seen, and it hasn't been that long since we went through a fairly significant effort to revise our parking lot design standards, and lighting is a part of that, pedestrian walkways is a part of that, and so on. So we might ask staff also to bring us a little bit of information about how we got to where we are. And that's, again, part of the reluctance that I have to disrupt that effort,
Yeah, I'm also concerned that nobody in the areas that are within the 300 feet notification may have been notified and ultimately are going to be affected. I would advise you to take a continuance or request a continuance and do some research on what you guys might be able to do to limit our concerns. You've heard what they are, and bring some more research to us that'll maybe make it feel a little bit more comfortable on what you're trying to accomplish.
We have 2 meeting dates in February, and if you feel like you need a continuance for longer than that, but February the 4th and February the 18th are available.
Well, at this point, I'll take February the 4th, and I can work with JJ if that. I would like to bring in a lighting vendor as well as some of our retailers to talk more in depth with you about your concerns.
You might also want to bring us a site plan. I mean, if
Yes.
part of your argument is that,
Yes.
that the issues with the lighting will be buffered from the nearby residential by the actual placement of the buildings, then you may want to show us that.
Will do.
I agree with that also. Any reference to, other than code provisions that you're relying on, we need a copy of those provisions
Yes, ma'am.
before us. The documentation is not before us today.
All right, we have a request from the applicant to continue 14140 to February the 4th.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Register your vote. We'll see you February the 4th.
Thank you.
If there's no other business before this board, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So second.
Motion and a second. Register your vote. We are adjourned.